if you live in Panama and you work in Panama, you're good. It's easy to get a mortgage from a bank. Generally, we suggest going to your bank instead of a new bank. The due diligence process is a lot easier. Banks, of course, are going to look at what they always look at: income, credit history, maybe some savings, what your liquidity is looking like, and of course, what you're purchasing. If you fall into that category, you might only have to put down 10, maybe 15%, maximum 20% against the purchase price. You can buy something existing or something in construction. Bank rates these days around, fit your primary residence, around 5%, 5.5%, maybe a bit better, just a hair below 4, or excuse me, hair below 5. But if you live outside of Panama, or if you live inside of Panama and your income originates from outside of Panama, you might have to get a bit creative. Banks might finance you if you've got a history with the bank, a couple years, if you've got a residency status, i.e. permanent resident. If you've been with your current employer for quite some time, but there are some hoops you're going to have to jump through. I'll walk you through the traditional financing path, and then I'm going to tell you about some other options that we're starting to see from both developers and individual sellers. So traditional financing in Panama for a foreigner who works abroad is an uphill battle. First of all, if you do get approved, you're probably going to have to put down 40% of the purchase price. You're probably going to end up paying a slightly higher rate, perhaps even as high as 6.5% to 7%. Your terms will be traditional in terms of payback period. Usually it's 20 years. You can speed that up a little bit. Banks offer products where you can also put down a deposit and they'll lend against that, but where's the leverage? So that's what you're looking like typically on financing with a bank. Now, what we're seeing is that developers are starting to give financing, which is great because that is essentially a pathway to getting traditional financing. You build your credit history, and you're more attractive to banks. And that's why developers are offering a shorter loan payback period. So usually developer will only finance about 5 years out. Oftentimes you do not get possession of that property until you've paid off the entire loan. Generally, there is a large balloon at the end. However, developers are getting creative these days. They're offering lease to own, where a percentage of what you pay in the rent gets applied to the purchase price. You can also make deposits. Well, you generally have to lock it up with a deposit, say around 5% of the purchase price. Generally anywhere from 50 to 100% of the lease to own rent that you pay gets applied to the sales price. And then once their financing kicks in, it's generally around these days about 7%. So kind of competitive with the banks, certainly not cheap. But hey, it's a bridge, right? It's a bridge to getting into the financial system here and a way to be more bankable for traditional loans. Sellers are also giving financing terms, generally negotiated around current bank rates, usually a bit shorter, but hey, seller might appreciate the bump up in the asking price because that's usually what it entails, and obviously charging interest on the unpaid remainder of the purchase price. So there are options, ladies and gentlemen, fear not. Even though banks can be notoriously difficult to deal with, a couple things to expect if you want to go the traditional bank finance route. Don't plan on getting it started before you come to Panama, because banks in Panama, I don't know if they're busy. I don't know if they are all sharing one computer, but they're real slow on email responses. So that's tricky to try to get your process started before you come to Panama. You need to come there. You need to open up a bank. You need to meet your banker. You need to get their WhatsApp, right? That's how you're going to stay in touch, not email, WhatsApp. Don't blow them up too much or else they might block you. That said, you come in, you get set up. It can be done. However, it's not easy. Currently, the banks that are financing foreigners, I can count them on one hand. You got Scotia, Banismo, Multibank, kind of. Capital Bank, yeah, still. Banco General is tricky unless you already have an account with them. And when I say foreigners, if you're Panamanian and you live abroad and you're making your money abroad to a bank, sorry, you are still a foreigner. They're concerned about where your money is coming from. Most notably, is it a steady, it could be retirement, it could be an annuity. If that's steady, hey, usually the U.S. government's paying that. So it's not an issue. However, just be prepared for headaches, be prepared for a longer slog. And that is why non-traditional financing, i.e. developer financing, rent to own, and private seller financing is the new mortgage in Panama. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. It's Friday. This is what we do on Fridays. Is sometimes it's just me, Kent Davis, talking head. Otherwise, we'll get some guests on. So we love comments. We love feedback. Always curious to know where you're watching from. Even if you don't catch us live, we'll grab your comments. We'll grab your questions. And for more information, PanamaEquity.com. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Happy Friday.